You ready?
I'm ready.
All
Here
right,
we
cool.
go.
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have as my guest today, Court Vox. Court, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. So Court provides personal guidance and expertise in the unique and often ignored areas of sex. He's a trained sex and intimacy consultant, surrogate partner intern, and sacred intimate. His approach is personal and necessary. Founder of his practice, the Body Vox, he brings professional opportunities for his clients to learn about and embrace their bodies and those of others. Sex, the thing the world is now acknowledging as so important for our general wellness, mental health, and indeed our lives, is on the agenda. While much progress has been made, it's still too often a taboo subject. Court serves as a counselor of our times, breaking down the walls of shame and anxiety around intimacy and sex. All right. Welcome to the podcast. So before we get going here, share with our listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
So I grew up in Las Vegas, and I currently reside in Los Angeles. And yeah, I've been here 22 years, so I consider myself a native at this point.
So I want to comment before on your bio, which is really well written, and it's very it's very intentional. There's a couple things in here I want to just bring out before we get going here. It says your approach is personal and necessary. Obviously, personal, we understand. What does necessary mean to you?
You know, I don't know that this work is necessary for everyone, but I think what is necessary is this sort of collective acknowledgement of that we do have a connection to our entire bodies, not just from the waist up or from our thighs down, or simply just our genitals, right? We tend to like isolate our genitals or isolate our sexuality in sexual situations from the rest of our body. And then oftentimes when we're in non-sexual situations, we completely forget that we have them. And it's sort of like how we compartmentalize sexuality or eroticism. And I think, you know, if we are to move forward in a way that really is enlivened and embodied, it is recognizing that our body is in its entirety. And so when I talk about a holistic body, what I'm really talking about is, first of all, our entire physical body, including the genitals, including our brain and our mental capacities, as well as our connection to spirit, which, you know, our connection to spirit is not just God, but it's the things around us and what our specific connection to spirit is. And it's sort of this mystery that humans, we're never going to be able to figure out, but we'll always be seeking for. And I think that's one of the beauties of being human, is feeling a connection to the divine, whatever that means to you, and not fully understanding it. In the Western world, we seek so often to figure things out when intuitively we already know it to be so. Yeah, so that's my approach, and I think it's necessary, specifically from a cultural perspective, to look at things in this way.
So how the heck did you get into this?
So long story
first
short,
of all, what is this we're talking about? What are we talking about?
Yeah. So I'm a somatic sex and intimacy coach. Somatic means of the body. So unlike a traditional coach or a therapist that just speaks and uses language as a tool for learning and processing, I use body-based exercises and experiential learning and touch as a way to help clients really find the answers and connect the dots between their mental capacity, their spiritual being, and their entire body. And a lot of times that does include their sexuality, because they've pushed it down or put it to the side. And when I'm speaking about the erotic body, I'm not necessarily speaking about sex itself. You know, eroticism can be found laying in the sun or walking down the street and smelling flowers. It's really alive in our senses. And we're often so busy that we don't find time to connect with it. And so that's what I mean by erotic body. How I got into this, well, that was the second question, right?
Right, yeah.
How I got into this was I worked in corporate for maybe 15 years. I worked for Yahoo, and then I worked for a company called Maker Studios that got acquired by Disney. And I really, in my 30s, had a kind of sexual movement of self, really. It was a perfect storm of Truvada being introduced to the market, as well as online dating apps and things like that. And in my 20s, I was in two long-term monogamous relationships. And when I came out of the second one, I was like, you know what? If I'm going to really experiment and, be the sexual being that I've always wanted to be, this is the time. I am no longer afraid of getting HIV, and I am feeling freer in my body and feeling more alive in my body than ever. And there's all this accessibility available to me, and why not? So, for most of my 30s, I was sort of in my own sexual exploration. And then, working for corporate just felt more and more dead to me as I moved up in the ranks. During that time, I was also a musician. I was in a lead singer in a band, and that sort of kind of came to a close in when I was 37. And that's around the time when I started studying shibari rope bondage, and had a practice partner who was a therapist. And I said, I really would like to get out of corporate. And I would like to be a sex therapist, but not one that just talks to people. And I said, I don't think that exists. And she said, check out sexological bodywork. And so I did. And then I enrolled for a certification course in somatic sex education that took me around 2 years to finish. I also studied surrogate partner training during that time. I've been and continue to be a student of Tantra and BDSM practices. I'm studying with Resma Menachem to study social justice, and also going to the Netherlands here in August to study more about shadow work, and how I'm really excited to start to bring that into the work that I do with eroticism. So just a lot of different tools and a lot of different trainings that sort of like bring into focus the work that I bring to clients.
So a lot here I want to touch upon. First of all, what was it about? I guess why did you want to become a sexual therapist or a sex therapist?
Well, first of all, I love sex. I feel most alive in sexual and erotic connections with people. Um, I I practice and I go into trance states, and I have been going into trance states just naturally, and have been really practicing and honing skill to stay in them for longer periods of time. Um, and I would describe that as feeling so intentionally focused and aware and present that I'm not here and I'm not there. I'm not really anywhere. I'm sort of in an altered state of consciousness with the person that I'm with, or even with myself and my own pleasure practice. And these are really, really rich experiences that feed me on such a cellular level that I feel a sense of aliveness for days afterwards. And you know, if everybody could have this sort of medicine, which I really view it as medicine that we curate on our own, we create on our by ourselves. Um, like what a gift to be able to give that to people. And so really my journey in becoming a teacher was learning how to teach what I've really known in my body for a long time. Because there's a difference between having that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being able to teach it. They're two different things. And it's great to be able to have it. But just to say I have this capacity and not know how to translate it to people is sort of an asshole move, right? I've spent quite a bit of time learning how to translate in kind of palpable ways, how to experience what I experience in my body. And that comes through practical exercises, embodiment exercises. And if people really set about the practices and really commit, they get there. And some of my students have really met me in the place that I'm at, or they've surpassed me, to be honest, in ways that they're bringing all of their learning and all of their gifts that they've had from other trainings or other experiences and bringing it to this. And what a gift that's been to see them come alive in that way. So
It seems to me as though, when we're talking about people who maybe have experienced trauma, I mean, obviously they're not even at a baseline state, right? Maybe they're just trying to get to a baseline state, let alone get into this trance state. How do you work with someone who maybe is, my God, I was sexually abused when I was a kid. I don't know what the hell is going on. I can't even get there. I don't even feel comfortable talking about this.
yeah. Yes. So by the time people have come to me, they have talked quite a bit about it. Most of my clients have done quite a bit of psychotherapy, and I do get a lot of referrals from psychotherapists who are basically like, I've taken my client as far as I can go in speaking about this, and now they need to have the actual experience of receiving touch and being with somebody in person, in body. And it's just so scary
Mm,
to go out in the world and just pick someone ad hoc, who's not familiar with, who's not trauma informed and not doesn't have the patience enough to sit with this person, and go through all the trials and tribulations that it's going to take for them to literally rewire their nervous system and pathways in their nervous system to comprehend touch and affection and attention with nurturing, caring, loving, um, ideals. Because a lot of their experience, specifically with trauma survivors, is that those types of touch and those types of attention and those types of energetic pull are associated with taking and shadow taking energy, that was not wanted or consented to. It has to do with rape and violence and molestation. And those are really ugly things to associate touch with. And so it's literally me being with this person and assuring them step by step, slowly and consciously and consistently, I'm going to put my hand on your hand. What does this feel like? Can you stay with me for a minute, noticing the sensations in your hand? And so we start there,
mm,
and then we start to increase the landscape of the body, and that can take time. It's a great deal of trust that is built, um, and for those people that we're starting at a baseline, that's not a one and done. This isn't like a recreational time that they're coming with me, and they're not just looking to expand. They're really looking to like build foundation, which is a totally different place than a client who's like, I love my sex life and I want to learn how to be in trance states, right?
right.
Um, and there's those are both beautiful places to begin with, and yet they're really different. I take really different approaches to those types of clients, and that's where my training in surrogacy really comes in handy, um, and also somatic sex therapy or somatic sex education. In that both of those modalities are the kind of philosophy is you meet the client where they are. I'm not pushing any sort of agenda. I'm always giving a choice for them to choose from. What about this exercise, or this one?
Hmm.
I'm feeling like this could track to your learning goal today. What do you feel about this? How does that feel? And they might say that feels really too edgy for me right now. And also the things that I'm suggesting to someone who is starting to build a foundation, as opposed to the person who has a foundation is just looking to expand further. We're starting with different processes. We're starting with different exercises, with different approaches. Um, and somebody that has experienced trauma and is still having that lived experience in their body, there's a lot of slowness that happens. And there's a lot of non-erotic touch that happens in the beginning, because we are again, I am trying to introduce touch to them in a way where they can associate it with loving, nurturing care instead of the opposite, which is what they've received in the past. And that takes time.
So, it's interesting as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, first of all, you are the first person who's come on here and talked about this to this degree,
Hmm.
which is really interesting. The other thing is, in the therapy world, just touch alone
Yeah,
is so charged.
right.
But here we're talking about, yes, you're talking about, just initially maybe touching someone's hand and then moving forward. I think I've said this before to you, but there's something so sacred and obviously intimate about this. How have you been able to grow into this ability, or has it just were you born like this?
You know, I both. I was born a very sexual human into a family with a mother who was um, very open and honest about sex, and we always had books around sexuality and the body, and the genitals were explained to us, and nudity in our house was really celebrated. We had open door policy in our house, which as children it was great because we would just yell good night. Just kind of, good night. It would sort of resonate in the house. But then as teenagers, we obviously started to shut our doors and more privacy. But I had my first sort of like erotic or sexual experience when I was 4 with my neighbor who was also 4, and we used to give each other blowjobs on the side of my house. And we would have orgasm. We wouldn't ejaculate, but we'd have orgasm. We would say, "Oh, hold on, I've almost got a tickle," And so I
Oh my
remember
God.
this. I remember this experience. And then, when I started to realize that I was different, that I was queer, I sort of went into a space of hiding myself for a while, and didn't quite come out of that really until I think I was 27. When I came out when I was 19, I had a little bit of a resurgence, but there was still so much fear around HIV and AIDS at that time that it made it hard to be intimate with people in a sexual way, without having some kind of knowing of all the things, and being really overly protective, and it took a lot of the joy out of it. And so with the advent of Truvada in the early 2010s, it really reintroduced a level of freedom and joy to our community in sex. Um, but to answer the question, I've done a lot of work in my on myself, and I continue to. I have great mentors. I have great peer support, which is really important when doing this work, because it can be isolating and lonely. Because, as you said, I'm the first person that you've had on here that does this, and there's really not that many people that work in the same way that I work in the world. I know most of them. I can say them all on my hands, and so it's a really specialized thing. It's a really unique offering, and it's not something everyone can do. And so I am really conscious in my practice. I get a lot of support. My mentor, Pamela Madsen, has been an incredible resource for me. She's been doing this work for 12 years with women, and I work with her at Back to the Body and work with women there. The team of the Somatic Sex Education School in Canada, Corinne Diacek and Liam Snowden, and those folks have been really incredible resources too. And then my mentor, Don Shuey, in New York, who is a sacred intimate and has been doing similar work for the past 15, 20 years, has been an incredible resource as well. So it's a combination of all the things, and I continue to expand my learning, and the more I learn, the more I'm able to offer clients. And yeah, I feel like my own practice is rich, and the things that I'm teaching clients are also the things that I practice. I am not asking them to do anything that I don't do myself, and I my slogan is really practice makes practice. practice for the sake of practice, not to get it perfect or to master it, because then really, where are we going?
Hmm.
We're going towards an end goal, and the journey is more important.
Recently, in our culture, there's been a greater awareness, a heightened awareness of mental health. Across if we look at professional
Mhm.
athletes and so forth. Do you think we are anywhere near that in terms of sex, accepting sex, understanding sex, decreasing its impact as a taboo topic?
I think yes and no. I think there's a collective yearning that's happening on social media and in the zeitgeist of the world around sex positivity and body positivity and body acceptance, and they're intrinsically intertwined, right? You can't speak about one without the other. And when you're speaking about sexuality, you're talking about people's connection to their bodies. What's interesting is simultaneously governments across the world are really taking away rights that involve embodiment. So when you speak about taking women's right away for abortion, right to choose abortion, that is taking away body autonomy from them. And when you take people's autonomy away, it's much easier to control them. And
Hmm.
so there is sort of this juxtaposition happening within our culture, which is where the people are like, I want this. And the government is like, no, you don't. You don't get to have it. And it's happened. It's happened throughout history. Like this is not the first time. I mean, the 70s were a huge time of sexual exploration and growth. And um, simultaneously, sexuality and sexual wellness has become a really hot topic, and psychedelics are also on the rise of, and so it'll be interesting to see how the government deals with both. um, there's a lot of similarities when I talk about trans states in sexuality. There are studies, and actually Pamela has done some research recently on how these trans states that we achieve in erotic connection are almost identical to the ones that people are achieving in psychedelic experiences, the trance states that they're experiencing there. The only difference is it's much easier to access them through psychedelics. And it takes people longer to understand the pathway to their trance state through erotic connection and touch and things like that. And people don't want to put the work in.
Hmm.
But it's available. Like our bodies are incredible resources. We just need to know how to play our instruments correctly.
As we kind of wind down here, so who comes to you? Who goes to you? Who are your clients?
Yeah. So I work with queer men and I work with women. I do also work with straight couples once in a while, and I work with gay and queer couples also. And I've worked with a few straight men, but the way that I work with them is a little bit different, just because of the nature of the work. And sometimes I'm not the right fit for straight men. Um, yeah, those are the main kind of groups that come to work with me. I tend to work with all kinds of bodies and orientations. I'm not I don't make a distinction. And there's just some people that I'm a better fit for.
Hmm. In terms of, and lastly, obviously, a lot of therapists, a lot of coaches are listening to this. For those who are intrigued and maybe want to learn more, where would you direct them? Aside from your site, what other
Yeah.
type of resources?
So I just launched an online community and a first module of courses, which are really embodiment courses in breath, movement, sound, using your voice, developing your voice, as well as attunement and kind of inner knowing, and also locating desire. So that's the first module. There's two more that will be launched probably by first quarter of next year. And as you know, it's a great deal of work to produce these courses, and so little by little. But I launched that with Guideness, and that's also on my website. I do retreats and workshops for queer men. I have one coming up in September in Los Angeles, a retreat in Mexico in in February of next year. And then I also work with Back to the Body, which runs retreats for women year round.
Awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll have all those linked up, the show notes here at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Court's site is thebodyvox.com. We'll also have that linked up.
Perfect.
Court, love to have you back, believe it or not. You are so incredible.
One more time.
You're so incredible, man. Really, you're so inspiring. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate you having me. Thank
All
you.
right.